My name is Bennett, and the strangest revenge I have ever taken against my wife was not cheating, screaming, or walking away forever. I simply gave her exactly what she said she wanted: space. What she did not expect was that once I stopped chasing her, she would finally realize how much of our marriage had been built around me chasing, adjusting, and staying silent. I remember the night everything started. I was sitting on the couch watching the game when Sabrina walked into the room and stood directly between me and the television. She had that serious expression people wear when the decision has already been made and the conversation is only about announcing it. I muted the TV and asked what was wrong, already knowing I was not going to like the answer. Sabrina sat beside me and said she had been thinking about our marriage. She told me she needed time to reconnect with herself and remember who she was outside of being my wife. Then she delivered the part one was not prepared for. For the next 30 days, she did not want any physical intimacy between us. No sex, no touching, no romantic affection. She said she needed a complete break from that side of our marriage. For a few seconds, I honestly thought she was testing me. I asked whether something had happened or whether there was something she had not told me. She insisted there was no one else and said she had been reading about couples taking breaks from physical intimacy. According to her, creating distance could actually make a relationship stronger. I wanted to challenge the idea, but I could see she had already decided. So I simply told her I would respect it. She smiled like I had just given her exactly what she wanted. She thanked me for being understanding and kissed my cheek before walking away. I stayed on that couch staring at the frozen television screen, wondering how agreeing to my own wife had suddenly made me feel like a guest in my own marriage. At that moment, I had no idea that her 30-day decision would eventually force both of us to face the truth. The first several days were uncomfortable, but I tried to be mature about it. I gave Sabrina the space she requested. What I did not expect was how quickly that space would spread into everything else. She stopped sitting beside me. She slept turned away from me. She barely touched me when we passed each other in the hallway. Even her normal affection disappeared, replaced by polite conversations that sounded more like something between roommates. By the second week, I stopped pretending it did not hurt. The problem was not simply physical intimacy. I could handle waiting. What crushed me was watching the woman I married become emotionally unavailable while expecting me to smile and call it healthy. She seemed happier with every passing day, almost relieved. Meanwhile, I was walking around our house wondering how a man could live beside his wife and still feel completely alone. Then something inside me changed. I realized I had been treating her decision like a rule I was required to follow, instead of a relationship issue we were supposed to discuss together. So on the 14th day, I decided to stop chasing her. I did not threaten divorce. I did not start an argument. I did not cheat. I simply decided that if Sabrina wanted distance, she was finally going to understand what real distance felt like. The next morning, I told her work had become complicated and that I needed to travel for several days. She barely questioned it. In fact, she seemed relieved. I drove several hours away, rented a small place, turned off my location, and stopped giving her detailed updates. When she asked when I would be home, I answered with the same kind of uncertainty she had given me. I told her I needed time to think and figure out what I wanted. For the first few days, nothing happened. Sabrina sent normal messages, and I responded when I felt like it. Then her tone changed. She began asking whether I was okay. A few days later, she started asking when I was coming home. Then came a message I never expected from her. She said she missed me. I stared at those 3 words for a long time, because I had spent weeks feeling exactly that way while she was only a few feet away from me. A few days later, my phone started ringing repeatedly. Sabrina wanted to know where I was. She asked whether there was another woman. Her voice became more emotional with every conversation. Eventually, she asked me directly if I was cheating on her. I told her I was doing what she had taught me to do. I was taking space. I was reconnecting with myself. I was trying to remember who I was outside of being a husband. She immediately told me it was different. I asked her how. She said my disappearance was cruel and that I was abandoning her. That was when I finally said what I had been holding inside. I told her that I had not disappeared first. She had simply managed to create distance without leaving the house. She was emotionally unavailable every night, every morning, and every time I reached for her. The only difference was that I had finally stopped pretending it did not matter. The call ended badly. Sabrina was furious, and I was strangely calm. For years, I had believed being a good husband meant being endlessly flexible. If she needed space, I gave it. If she changed plans, I adjusted. If something bothered her, I swallowed my frustration because I thought keeping peace was part of loving someone. But while sitting alone hundreds of miles away, I finally understood something painful. I had not been compromising. I had been disappearing. I extended my stay until nearly the end of the month. I wanted Sabrina to have enough time to think without me rescuing her from the discomfort. And I needed that time too. I began asking myself questions I had avoided for years. When was the last time Sabrina had seriously asked what I needed? When had I said no without feeling guilty? When had I made a decision simply because it was important to me instead of worrying about how she would react? The answers were uncomfortable. I had slowly trained myself to accept less because I thought love required it. I had mistaken silence for patience and surrender for compromise. The strange part was that Sabrina had never demanded that I erase myself in those exact words. I had done it because I was afraid that standing up for myself would create conflict. Now that I had finally stopped doing it, she was terrified of losing the version of me who always said yes. I came home on the 29th day. Sabrina was waiting near the front door before I even reached the house. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen, her hair was messy, and she looked like someone who had spent many nights fighting with her own thoughts. The second she saw me, she apologized. She said she had been thinking about everything I told her and finally understood why I had pulled away. We went into the kitchen, and Sabrina admitted that she had been selfish. She said she had created a boundary for herself without truly thinking about how it would affect me. Then she admitted that when I created distance in return, she finally experienced the loneliness she had unknowingly created inside our home. She told me she had missed me so badly that she became afraid there might not be a marriage left to come back to. I listened quietly before telling her something she needed to hear. I said I was not proud of disappearing either. I had done it to make a point, and I knew it hurt her. But I also told her that I could not keep living as a man who erased his own needs just to keep his wife happy. I did not want revenge. I wanted equality. If she needed boundaries, I needed boundaries too. If her feelings mattered, mine had to matter as well. We talked for hours that night. Not about who had won, but about what had gone wrong. We discussed intimacy, emotional needs, communication, expectations, and all the resentment we had allowed to build quietly. Sabrina cried. I cried too. And for the first time in years, neither of us was trying to win the argument. We were finally trying to understand the person sitting across the table. A year later, we were still together and had started couples therapy. Our marriage was not magically perfect. We still argued, disagreed, and occasionally slipped into old habits. But there was one major difference. I no longer disappeared when something bothered me, and Sabrina no longer expected me to automatically agree with everything she wanted. We learned that a boundary is not a weapon, and compromise does not mean one person constantly gives while the other constantly receives. During one therapy session, Sabrina said something I will never forget. She admitted that she had finally realized my needs were not less important than hers. She had spent so much time thinking about what she needed that she had forgotten marriage required two people. I told the therapist that I had learned something too. If I wanted to be respected as an equal, I could not keep waiting until I was completely broken before speaking up. Looking back, that month changed my life more than I ever expected. The revenge was never really about making Sabrina suffer. It was about removing myself from the role she had become comfortable with, the husband who always adjusted, always waited, always understood, and rarely demanded anything in return. When I stopped playing that role, she finally noticed the person who had been standing beside her all along. Today, I understand something I wish I had understood years earlier. You should never have to disappear before the person you love realizes that you are there. If you feel yourself becoming invisible, speak before resentment forces you to leave. Love is not supposed to be one person setting the rules while the other person quietly follows them. A real marriage requires two people who can say what they need, listen when the other speaks, and still choose each other when the answer is not easy. And that is what happened to us. I did not punish my wife. I showed her what life felt like when I stopped abandoning myself. She finally saw that the man she was afraid of losing had been slowly disappearing for years. And when I came home, I was not the same husband who had left. I was finally someone who understood that keeping a marriage alive should never require losing yourself inside it. If this story hit home, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe for more.